Today I'll talk about an encounter that happened between Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was 18 years of age. I think he was 18 or 19 years of age. He was a young man in college. He was very scientific and rational in his approach towards life. And he had heard Sri Ramakrishna talk about God once. And something about Sri Ramakrishna really resonated with Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was just a boy then. His name was Narendra. And he was just a young man. He wasn't Swami Vivekananda back then. He was just Narendra. So this boy went to see Sri Ramakrishna again in the temple that Sri Ramakrishna used to be at. And a very famous conversation happened between the two. Vivekananda asked Sri Ramakrishna that, "Can you see God?" And Sri Ramakrishna said, "Yes, I can see God." And Swami Vivekananda was perplexed because nobody up till now had told him that they'd seen God. And he asked, "No, do you see God as I see you? Do you see God just as you see me?" And Sri Ramakrishna replied, "Yes, I see God, and I see God more clearly than I see you. I see God more clearly than I see you." Now, this statement in itself contains a deep explanation of what God is. And then after that, the story becomes sort of paranormal, where after a few days, Sri Ramakrishna touched Vivekananda with his foot or touched his forehead or chest, and Swami Vivekananda was able to see God. And that, I think, is just forced divinity into a story, just to make the story more divine. Divinity doesn't have to be forced like this. It is only done by people who do not understand what Sri Ramakrishna said. And we will discuss that today. Sri Ramakrishna said that I see God more clearly than I see you. Now, what does that mean? As you've seen in my videos, we talk about how we see this world just because of our senses, right? Our senses, they perceive different forms and shapes and just label existence in terms of the shapes that we see. We call a tree, a fish, a dog, a chair, because of the way they appear to us, right? We see the distinct shape of a chair. We see the brown color. We see the woody texture, and we label it as a chair. The concept of chair is already in our heads, and we just recognize the chair because of what we've labeled that part of existence as. And we just recognize it as chair because we've known it as the chair. But these distinct shapes and forms are just visible to our senses, to our eyes. Many different creatures, they perceive the world in a completely different way. And I often talk about how a bat perceives the world. A bat, you might have heard of the phrase as blind as a bat, right? Bats, they can sense their environment in pitch darkness. And how do they do that? They let out a screech, a supersonic screech that hits all the surfaces and gets back to their ears, and they perceive the environment around them in the form of frequencies, right? Just an undivided mesh of frequencies. For them, there is no separate chair, there is no separate person, there is no separate tree, there is no separate rock, there's no separate walls, floor, ceiling. It's all one unified, undivided mesh that they experience. And many other creatures with other senses, they experience the world completely differently. So this world of physical forms that we see and perceive is just an illusion. It's just an appearance that appears to us because of our specific senses. In reality, existence is completely undivided. Completely undivided. There is no separation at all. It is one unified whole, just oneness. It is only when we see it through our senses, we see the appearance of different forms and shapes and colors. Truly, the existence is undivided. And that is what Sri Ramakrishna means when he says that I see God more clearly than I see you. The person that he sees in front of him is his perception of reality when viewed through his eyes. But he is talking of an experience that is even more direct, that bypasses the senses, that is almost inherent. And it is seeing existence as one unified, undivided whole, not perceived through the senses, but known by knowing the falsity of the things that we perceive through the senses. It is only by knowing the falsehood of the things that we perceive through our senses that this reality can be known. And Sri Ramakrishna calls this reality as God, this undivided existence as God. So when you see it through the senses, you will see a separate man, a separate person, a separate chair, a separate floor, separate walls, separate ceiling. But know that these are just appearances labeled by us in separation, when there is no separation. It's just all one unified, undivided existence. That is reality, and that is God. And seeing God just means that you see through this appearance of separate forms and colors and shapes, and perceiving reality as one undivided existence. That is what Sri Ramakrishna means when he says, I see God more clearly than I see you. And it is said that through that encounter, Swami Vivekananda was able to see God. And truly, there is no miraculous events required to make this explanation divine. Divinity is already there. It is just veiled by the illusion that we see. So try and perceive this reality. And you perceive it not in a sensory way. You perceive it by knowing the falsity of the appearance which appears to you. You perceive it by knowing how illusory this appearance is. The mind and the senses will constantly tell you otherwise. It is their job to do so. So it is difficult to perceive this reality. So try and know how false these illusions are. They appear differently to different creatures, and it appears to you in that specific way because of your specific senses and your specific mind. So this encounter was truly divine, but the divinity wasn't in an event or in a particular way in which Sri Ramakrishna touched Vivekananda on the forehead or with his toe. None of that. Only by understanding what Sri Ramakrishna meant can you see God. And it's so subtle that it escapes most people. So know the true meaning of it. Swami Vivekananda was able to see it, and so can you. Just perceive the falsity of this illusion. Just wanted to share this beautiful story with you and its true meaning. It wasn't some divine event, it was the explanation that was divine. So think about it.